Welcome back for another lore video. In today's video we're going to talk about a short and stout, bold and hardy race, you guessed it, the Dwarves. So grab your beer, I'm not going to say coffee anymore because this is a bonfire. I can't believe none of you called me out on that earlier. Enjoy the fire and let's talk Dwarves. The Dwarves will be a playable race in Baldur's Gate 3, and as you'd expect they have a lot of history. Do we have any Bruenor fans in here? And no, Bruenor is not the name of a sports team, it's the name of a legendary dwarven king who all should aspire to be like. How about any Pwent fans? So near the end of this video, we'll talk about what the advantages are for choosing the dwarven race in Baldur's Gate 3, as well as what subclasses will be available and what they might offer. So you're going to want to stick around for the entire video. If you guys end up enjoying this video, please subscribe for there's much more videos like this to come. Let's get right into it. The Dwarves were a tough tradition-abiding natural humanoid race common throughout parts of the planets of Toril and Abir. They were a short race, typically standing between 4'3" and 4'9", but weighing anywhere from 160 to 220 pounds. What they lack in height, they certainly make up for in bulk, for they weighed similar to that of what humans would weigh. The dwarven males were a bit taller and heavier than their female counterparts. A dwarf's skin, eye, and hair colors were of a wide variety, from the mountain dwarves typically having lighter skin with green or blue eyes and light brown or red hair, to the hill dwarves who were typically of a darker skin complex with brown or hazel eyes and black, gray, or brown hair. Dwarves were well known for their ability to grow thick and long facial hair, which was sometimes used to display social status. Both sexes could grow ample facial hair, although the majority of the female mountain dwarves shave their beards off. So if you're going to play a male dwarf, you need to ask yourself, do you prefer a 5 o'clock shadow on your lady friend, or are you just going to go all out and get the full dwarven experience and date a female hill dwarf? I'm not sure if I'm ready to take that step yet, so I'll probably deactivate Tinder while near the hill dwarf areas. Okay, back to the lore. The dwarves were a long-lived race and could live up to 400 years old. The dwarf was still regarded as young until they reached the age of 50. They were unusually tough compared to other humanoids, and not just for their ability to take a hit and not be pushed around, but their stomachs were resistant to virtually all poison. Dwarves in general were difficult to like, for they lacked the charm that many other races had, though there were some dwarves who possessed great charismatic power. Although you may not take a liking to the one you meet on the street, they had many traits that were to be admired. They were strong, hardy, dependable, brave, and also known to be polite to their elders, regardless of race. They were also typically very wise, and they placed great value in their traditions and their ancestral heroes. A dwarven friendship was hard to earn, but was extremely strong once won. If you have plans of betrayal on your mind, you might want to rethink that strategy, for as the gnomes say, if I'm lying, may I cross a dwarf. Loyalty was more than just a word for a dwarf, for they believed it a gift and a mark of respect to stand beside a friend or even protect a friend in combat. If I don't play a dwarf myself, I will certainly have one in my party. The dwarven race as a whole had a strong inclination for religion, and they often turned to their gods for guidance and protection. The non-evil dwarves looked to the divine for inspiration, while the evil ones looked to their divine overlords for methods through which to obtain power over others. Most dwarven societies were divided into clans built along family ties and political alliances, and breaking the loyalty of a dwarf to their clan was nearly impossible. The dwarves preferred living in underground cities near the surface and above the Underdark. These cities were built around mines which provided for much of their livelihood. Some cities would take centuries to build, but once they were built, they stood strong and were nearly ageless. Since the dwarves did not forgive past wrongdoings easily, the race as a whole remained at war with goblins and orcs. They viewed these races as a foul infestation of their mountain homes, and they felt it was their duty to purge them. The Legend of Drizzt book series offers some good insight into the dwarven culture as you get into the later books. I highly recommend it. Hal, Bruenor, and Pwent. The relationship that the dwarves have with the orcs becomes very interesting in these books. Does anyone remember the orc Obald? He was quite an interesting character. The exact origins of the dwarves as a whole were lost in myth and legend. Other races thought of them as not even originating on the planet of Toril, while dwarves themselves believed that their ancestors came from the heart of the planet, created and crafted by the moral god of the dwarves, Moradin. The dwarves were Moradin's greatest show of craftsmanship, and upon their creation, they fought their way through the dangerous depths to create a life near to the surface world. The first great kingdom of the dwarves was Beirindin, which was centered in the great cavern beneath the Shar, which was in southern Faerun. Beirindin prospered for centuries, but gradually became to endure schisms and fractures, which ultimately drove the dwarves apart. The first of these schisms occurred 12 millennia ago and was led by Tark Shanat, the Crusader, who led a westward migration from the caverns. This would lead to the creation of the vast empire of Shanatar, which is where the Shield Dwarves, otherwise known as the Mountain Dwarves, came into existence. Beirindin would ultimately fall to the Drow, and the Southern Dwarves were driven into exile, ending the ancient kingdom. The descendants of Beirindin would return a millennia later and form a new kingdom. These dwarves were known as the Gold Dwarves or the Hill Dwarves. One subrace of dwarves that lived in the Underdark were the Duergar, which were a cruel and evil subrace of dwarves, and they remained long-time enemies. They were viewed with the same love as the dwarves viewed the Drow, so yeah, not much. The Duergar were originally captured and enslaved by the Mind Flayers, which in time caused them to become more and more distant from their kin. We all know what enslavement from the Mind Flayers can do to a race. It makes for quite a selection of tragic stories. The Duergar actually sought to destroy the dwarven god of Moradin, for they felt that he had abandoned them. While the majority of dwarves believed in happiness from work, no matter the craft, and they loved showing off their creations, the Duergar took slaves to do their grudge work and looked at it as something that weaker creatures would do. They were a dark reflection of their race, and if we come across them in Baldur's Gate 3, it will likely be in a combat situation. But beware, for they have developed some psionic abilities from their time spent with the Mind Flayers. Dwarves were well known for their craftsmanship, blacksmithing, mining, and stoneworkers among the list. They would strive to reach the level of perfection in their craft that their gods had set for them, not only for personal satisfaction, but also in knowing that it would help out their clan. Over the centuries, dwarves entered into a long decline, and most of the ancient kingdoms that once stood had fallen. Parts of the north were overrun and conquered by the orcs of many arrows, while the dwarves in the south were largely driven from their underground kingdom in the Great Rift to the surface world. Despite this, the dwarves remained proud and hardy people, which is why they can be greatly admired by players. King Bruenor was one such dwarf who remained proud and greatly determined to restore the power of his race, and he would eventually reclaim the city of Mithril Hall. When Bruenor was just a boy, he and his people were driven out of Mithril Hall by the shadow dragon Shimmergloom and the Duergar. With the help of a legendary drow named Dristo Erden and some other legendary friends, he would create a tale to be remembered for all of time to come. I don't want to give away too much, for like I said, read the Legend of Drist book series and you shall find out. Now let's talk about what benefits you might gain from playing a dwarf in Baldur's Gate 3. There will likely be at least 2 subclasses of dwarves in Baldur's Gate 3. The 2 confirmed are the Mountain Dwarves and the Hill Dwarves. Despite your subclass choice, as a dwarf you will likely gain +2 to your Constitution ability score. You will most definitely gain Dwarven weapon training, which will likely give you weapon proficiency in battle axes, hand axes, light hammers, and war hammers. And you will also gain Dwarven resilience, which will give you advantage on saving throws against poison, and also give you resistance against poison damage. For the subclass of Hill Dwarves specifically, you will gain Dwarven toughness, which will make your hit point maximum increase by 1, which will also increase by 1 every time you gain a level. You will also gain a +1 to your wisdom ability score. As a mountain dwarf, even though we have not seen an in-game picture, you will likely gain a +2 to your strength ability score, and also gain Dwarven armor training, which will give you proficiency with light and medium armor. The dwarf really is a great race. I love them even more for all the players who want to play pretty boys or girls, typically want nothing to do with this race, letting us tough mofos who are less worried about looking in the mirror in the morning take the reins. No offense to anyone though, for I still love playing as an elf as well. There's still much more to talk about with the dwarven race, but at least now you have a good understanding of what this tough race is all about. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. It's a huge help to my videos. I do all sorts of videos on this channel, ranging from comedy videos to live streams to game reviews to game tutorials to product reviews, etc. I would love to see some of you guys on a future video. Much more Baldur's Gate 3 content on the way. Until next time.